This is Guitarist Denis Taaffe, and I'm in my home studio, and I want to welcome you to the making of my 342nd album called Modern Rock Guitar Vol.342 Components. Now, real quick, for those who aren't familiar with my music or what I do, is basically I'm a guitarist, a solo electric guitarist who uses guitar and guitar loops done on the fly to create instrumental music. In particular, film music. Okay, is what I'm basically interested in and trying to go for. And basically, all of my music is performed live in the studio and improvised on the spot. And the way this is done is basically I'll be playing and I'll come up with an idea, record it on a phrase sampler, a pedal board, starts to loop that idea, and then I layer different sounds on top of that. In addition, I emulate bass on guitar and other instruments, but it's all guitar based and it's all analog based. So there's no MIDI guitar or triggering of samples like that. I guess the exception may be if I use drums. That would be usually a drum machine, that has drum samples in it, I guess. But other than that, everything is guitar based. All the sounds are guitar based, and because it's improvised on the spot, you really have to take chances, and sometimes you fall flat on your face. Other times it works really well. I'm always surprised to see, which musical direction it takes me in. So I've been very fortunate in that way that, creating albums and musical ideas that it doesn't get boring, and that kind of thing. Okay, real quick, let's talk about the cover. It's basically just a public domain photo that I liked, with the mountains, and then it's got a lake and so on, and so I added little pictures of myself in the lake, along with little pictures of guitars. And if you look closely, if you look near the front of the lake, there's like little photos of me, but it looks like it's underwater. I don't know, it's just for fun. It's goofy. Okay, now I wanted to get to the reason it's called components is because here I was using some vintage processors, guitar processors, such as everything from the DoD G7, DoD G10 guitar processors from the 80s, the RP50, which is a Digitech unit. So it gave me all these different guitar sounds. Now I still did used my usual sounds, but not as much, and did less looping than I normally would on an album. So these are more like core musical ideas that I would use for looping. But strangely enough, by the time I was done experimenting with all those processors, I had all these recordings, and suddenly this album emerged that I ended up really liking. So hopefully you'll like it too. It's actually has quite a few tracks, and the reason is a lot of these are shorter tracks. They range anywhere from I think the smallest one is 48 seconds, which is really short. With the largest being about 7 minutes on there. So that's why we have a total of 13 tracks. And even though 13 tracks, it's actually a pretty short album. It's 47 minutes long. Okay, now I did some videos on the DoD G7 and G10. Here's a G10, for example. My G10 with the crusty knob. It's not original knob, obviously, but it works. So this is kind of an old processor, back in the... Oh, this one's probably in the 90s, I would think. About over there. So, and there it's got all kinds of different guitar sounds. Well, by itself it doesn't sound all that great, but I hooked it up with my normal pedal board and got some really neat sounds. I thought, wow, this is something really different. So let's experiment and record with that. And by the way, I like the DoD one so much that I went out and tried to buy one of each as a backup, and it was a total disaster. Because unfortunately, the two that I bought were defective. They didn't work. Now, it could be just they're so old that they need a new, maybe internal battery or a new input jack, I would guess. These kinds of things, and that happens. And unfortunately, the people who are selling them to me didn't have the original power supply, so they didn't test them, or weren't able to test them before I got them. But anyway, I found that it was much harder, I guess I should count my blessings. In fact, the DoD G10 right here, was basically hidden in a scrap pile in the back of a music store, never seeing the light of day. And in fact, when I asked, well, how much is it, the owner, Phil at Advanced Music, had to say, well, I don't really know, I don't remember. That's how old it is. So he had to look it up and gave me a pretty good deal, which I appreciate. Okay, anyway, so, and what I really like about this album, obviously the different sounds that I got, and that they're guitar sounds, and some of the tracks are by themselves are just guitar, no looping or nothing, which is kind of cool, really. Well, for me anyway. I really like it. So anyway, track 1, we'll start there, and it's a track called Tapestry, because it's using a DoD G7 processor, and that's an oldie. That's the grandfather of the G10, which came out later. And what I like about that one is it's so simple. The simplicity of it, It was not very complicated. Like, I know I have a lexicon processor, and man, there's just pages and pages. Menus you have to go through to create just the most basic sound. This is not quite like that. And the reason I call it Tapestry is because here I'm basically taking individual components, hence the title, right, of the, and putting them together. So this is using the DoD G7. Let's take a listen to that. Here it is. Okay. Alright, hold on a second. notice that right there my guitars have a classic 80s, 90s chorus sound, you know. And that was a very popular sound back then. And that's what these DoD processors do very well, you know. So I definitely use some of that here for these sounds. Fast forward a bit, because here I remember adding some pattern playing as the first time that I had, here it comes, and with those DoD processors, it's just enhanced. Yeah, with those DoD processors, you know, it's a enhanced pattern playing sound, you know, and without it, it sounds a lot more basic. Here it sounds more produced, I guess, but finished sounds. It's a real nice sound going through that processor and doing that, you know, the pattern playing with my regular pedal board. So I was really pleased about that. So let's take a listen to that a little bit more. Okay. So there it is, a pattern playing. Fast forward a bit to the 3-minute 55 mark. Okay, now here, the pattern playing is going in reverse. Gives you this kind of effect. Got really several layers going there. One with the main riff going forward, and the one with the pattern playing going in reverse. And we fast forward a little bit to the 547 mark. All going forward at that point. So the reverse, I changed it back to going forward. Okay, so that's really cool. I really like that, and I really like what those processors gave me some different sounds that were a little nicer. You know, and that's always satisfying when you can use an old processor that's basically been, you know, forgotten about. That it's actually decent enough to use in a recording even today, you know. That's going to say something about those old processors. Okay, now this next one is, remember I was trying to demonstrate these processors and I made a video, as I said. Well, part of that video was making examples, audio examples. So I would find a sound on the processor and just play something I just came up with. Well, when I listened back some of it I thought, man, that was kind of a neat track. So I put it on the album. And this is what track 2 is about. This is probably the G10. Unfortunately, I didn't write it down, but I think that's what it is. And it's a clean sound. And again, I think it's got some chorus on it, because it was that kind of sound. But it definitely reminded me of some, famous guitar players of the past, the 80s and 90s, who would use this type of sound quite often. Let's take a listen to that. And notice here, I don't think I used any looping at all, just guitar, clean guitar. Yep. And you can hear that chorus. That's going through 2 Black Star amps, so it's a real clean sound. Yeah, I can hear the DODs. The DOD's processors have this analog compression. So, and you can hear it on that track. There's an analog compressor in there. Especially when you're kind of muting some of the notes, is when you can really hear it. It's also got obviously the stereo chorus sound. Now, along that same way of demonstrating these processors and experimenting with them, going through their presets, see what can this thing do? Well, I came up with some very strange sounds. And this is how this track 3, came about. If you'll take a listen to it, it's kind of an odd sound. And this is the DOD G10. Now it's being looped. Right. So here, and this is exactly what I was looking for, is I wanted to use other than just clean guitar sound, maybe a clean guitar sound with a little tiny bit of distortion, or overdrive. They don't even call it distortion, because that's like turning it up. So they would call it overdrive, and they made pedals that were overdrive pedals that just didn't offer much distortion at all, just that little hinge, almost kind of like a tube amp, being overdriven a little bit. And this is a sound that I found on these processors, so I tried to use that, and I'm looping it, and let's take a listen to that some more. You'll hear that the guitar is not clean, it's distorted, but very likely. Pixel, please. Which baby? That's my cat. Okay. So you hear the guitar is distorted. And that goes for the little swell guitar, where you hit something and turn up the volume. That's distorted as well. Yeah, man. much to get a lot of distortion. You know, just a tiny bit. So let's fast forward that a bit. And let's go to the... Okay. Now, along those same lines, I thought, man, this whole time, you know, I've just been going through my pedal board, and so I really appreciated these different sounds I was getting, you know, with these old processors. So I looked around and I thought, well, do I have any other old processors I could try? And sure enough, I did. And let me show it to you. This is the Digitech RP50 little pedal here. And these are quite incredible because they're made by Digitech, and they actually have tons of effects and amp models, and it's in stereo, has delays, reverbs, all kinds of stuff. 8 effects at once, a built-in drum machine, built-in tuner, and it's I think new they were like $50. Hard to believe. And I had one, and this is something I forgot totally. I'm glad I'm making this video because I totally forgot. When I was looking at the G10 in the scrap pile, basically, well, they have the broken turd pile, if you like, of equipment. And sure enough, they had one of these. And I said, well, hey, what about this one? I go, so I don't know, I don't think that works. Right? But they had a little pedal board there, and I plugged it in, and I saw that it powered on. So I said, hey, this thing powers on. It says, well, I'll sell it to you for $10. So I bought it, and I'm glad I did. So taking that into consideration, now this has no MIDI, you know, like the DoD units have MIDI, so I can hit one foot switch, change all of my pedals, including the DoD, to different sounds. This is not the case here. I have to scroll through and pick a sound, and it's totally independent of my pedal board sounds, you know, so this wouldn't be very good for live use. Though I've actually played gigs with this, but different story. Okay. So anyway, I said, well, let's try that, you know, maybe plug that old processor into my pedal board and see what kind of sounds I did. And so and then I tried it and made a recording of it. And that's how I ended up with track 4. And I mean, look, I believe that it was also used in track 8 and 10 as well. But let's concentrate on track 4, the next track. And this is using that RP50 pedal in my pedal board. And I'm surprised I could actually use that on an album, quite frankly. You know, I mean, for a $10 pedal. You know, but here it is. Let's take a listen. So that clean sound is the Digitech RP50 pedal going into my delays on my pedal board into the 2 Black Star amps. That's that repeated pattern playing. And let's fast forward that a bit to the 2-minute 31-second mark. Now, do you hear that bass emulation? I believe that's from the RP50 as well. That's just a weird sound I found on the RP50. It's a little reverse guitar sound. And again, this was going to be a demonstration for a video on the pedal. But I liked it so much I thought, well, I'll put it on the album. Kind of cool. Okay. Now the next track, the 5-minute track, and we're back to the DoD G10 processor. I use that processor probably the most, just because it was plugged in that way. So I'm lazy. I didn't want to switch it out. But okay, let's take a listen. Yeah. What I really like about the DoD G10 is, for an old processor, is how clean it is. Oh, and here I was having a lot of fun playing, these chords, and then adding this bass line, kind of silly, because I wanted to get away from just playing the root note, so trying to play something besides that. I realize it's kind of dissonant, but I really like this track. It's actually a lot of fun. Yeah, because I do a lot of that root. Just playing bass on the root boom. So here I'm trying to play little patterns on the bass and things. And for film music, at least for me, I could see this definitely in a film, with a scene needing tension, or a horror scene from a horror movie, or that kind of thing. So there I am, doing a bend, making it sound like bass. Pretty silly. Let's fast forward a bit to the 3-minute mark. Okay. So now I've got several layers of loops. I've got the bass loop going, I've got the main guitar loop going. I'll fast forward a little bit, 419. So this really is experimenting with a different bass kind of sounds in contrast to the guitars, and getting that clean sound. Okay, now let's move on to the next track, and this track is only 48 seconds. So I mean that is short. And for the album, I called it Ingredients rather than Components. Alright, and let's check that out. Definitely another DoD you see, this would be something, if I was, doing an album of looping and so on, this would be an idea that I could loop and then improvise over, and get different ideas and see what direction it was. But in this case, I was just trying to see what kind of sounds I could get from these old processors. Okay, now we go to track 7. And track 7 is actually part 2 of track 3 that we've already gone through. But it's got a little more improvisation on top of it. It also means that I probably, between track 3 and track 7, was probably one track, and I probably hit a wrong note or something, so I had to cut it right there. Which is fine, because usually, it takes time to build the tracks, and I'm very slow as far as looping goes, so it takes a while. So here we should get more of the actual ideas that I was coming up with. Let's take a listen to that. Fast forward a bit. It's 5 minutes and 29 seconds long, so we'll go to the 3-minute 27 mark. So there we got the main theme being looped, a bass line being looped, and then on top of that, another guitar part, kind of improvising over it. There are some limitations, of using these old processors, and one of them is the bass sound, right? Because if I left the processor on all the time, it'd be great for that clean, chorusy sound of the guitar. But when you're emulating bass, dropping it an octave, you don't always want those same guitar effects on your bass sound, so I found that that was one limitation. So you had to kind of bypass the processor, then play the bass line, then turn it back on for the regular guitar parts. And that's something that can be accomplished with MIDI, or find a patch, a preset that works well with the bass emulation as well. Okay. So let's move on. And the next track is, we're back to the little RP50 here. And let's take a listen to that. I remember I used that quite a bit because I was kind of blown away that, wow, a little $10 effects unit and can actually get a decent sound out of it. That's crazy. But here it is. Let's take a listen. So that's the RP50 clean sound into delays on my pedal board done by Eventide pedals, which are pretty cool. I was recording this and playing in stereo. A lot of people don't know these are stereo, right? So if you listen, it's got kind of this ping pong type delay. Alright, let's fast forward a bit. Let's see what I did with this one. Let's go to the 246 mark. That's a swelled guitar. Nice. So there we've got several guitar layers with different clean sounds on there. And the swelled sound is where you hit a note and then turn up the volume, right? Because you don't want to hear the pick sound. That gives you kind of a keyboardy type sound. And usually I use the humbucking pickup, the bridge pickup, rather than the neck pickup. Because you need that kind of output to get it real smooth sounding. So this is the same kind of thing, just seeing what sounds I can get out of this little tiny pedal. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Right. Yeah. And this one, I'm guessing we're back to the G10. I'm not sure exactly. I think so. There's that chorusy, clean sound. Reminds me very much of that heavy metal clean sound you would hear, you know, from all those metal bands, Metallica for one, you know, Dawkins had them, you know. So let's fast forward to that 3-minute 22-second mark. You can hear that compressor. This has no looping at all, it's just improvising. we're back to the little RP50 pedal. Makes one last appearance. Here it is. Because I was just blown away. I mean, it has so many sounds in it, you know, for such a tiny pedal. And to get it for, you know, $10. It's crazy. Okay, but here we go. Pattern playing. And you can hear, if you listen closely, the bass line there. Let's fast forward a bit. 2-minute 58 mark. Now, by this time, it's quite funny. By this time, I mean, I was going crazy, trying all the different sounds that I had, you know. So I had the delay sound, you know, reverse sound. Now, it's not just the RP50 pedal, it's also my regular delay pedals and so on, and reverbs and so on. So I was trying all kinds of things. I got pretty comfortable using that little RP50. I was quite surprised. So it's not a toy, you know. I'm really quite impressed with it. And nowadays they have even better ones. You know, they have the latest version of RP55, RP90, and then they have the Element pedals. And those are getting quite expensive. But just for a cheapo pedal to create those kinds of sounds, I think it's quite impressive. Alright, let's take a listen a little more. Okay, fast forward a bit to the, 5-minute mark. Okay. Now this next track is called Cornered. And originally it was called Alien, by the way. Now this is a track, I just ran across a preset in the, I think it was probably the DoD G10 again, that was so odd. It was like this harmonized kind of sound. I tried to see if I could make a track out of it, you know, to demonstrate it, and this is what I came up with. But it's such an odd sound to begin with, you know. So, I don't know, but it was fun to make a track out of it, try to make something musical out of it, because it's not a very musical sound to begin with. In fact, usually I call those sound effect sounds. Alright, let's take a listen. It's this kind of harmonized guitar from the DoD unit, the G10. So I added a big cavernous reverb on top of it. Very strange harmonizing sound. careful of the notes I chose, because if you choose the wrong one, it doesn't sound like it's that it fits at all, you know. Almost sounds chromatic, so you gotta be real careful there. Let's fast forward that a bit. But remember, this was for film music. This is great. It's perfect for that. Even though it's such a strange sound, but to have that in the background, I can see it as seen in a film. Okay. And I think it goes on another minute. Okay. And I lied. I just realized I lied. I told you that the shortest track was 48 seconds. But I'm wrong, because I realized that track 12 is only 46 seconds. So, boy, I wonder what that is. I don't even know. I think this is probably when I first tried the DoD processor, probably a G7 actually, that I had tried, and it's a preset called Mr. Clean, because I realized here that originally the track was called Clean. Okay, let's hear it. Yeah. That's a big stereo spread sound, guitar sound. That's it. Okay, one more track. And I don't know what this one is. Let's take a listen. Okay, so that's the last track, and that one didn't have any looping or anything at all. It's just a musical idea. And remember, a lot of these were where I was making a video to test these units and see what kind of sound I could get out of them. A lot of these ideas I could expand upon, you know. And in fact, on the next album I do, though they're not quite the same ideas, close. So there you go, that's it. That's Modern Rock Guitar Vol.342 components. And this is an album I thought, boy, I don't know, you know, to have just one guitar playing, you know, I don't know if that'd be worthwhile to put on an album, however, I found that the more I listened to it, the more it grew on me, Even the tracks that have no looping whatsoever, and appreciate the musical ideas, improvised, and the guitar sound as well. These are all sounds that I hadn't used before on there, so I'm very pleased about that. Okay, so there you go. So see you next time. Bye.